Hello everyone, I'm Sneha. I'm back on my YouTube channel Storyteller. So I was reading out to you a story which is based on true event. It's the story of a shipwrecked sailor by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I hope you all have listened to the first part of the story. If you haven't listened to it yet, do visit my YouTube channel and listen to the first part. And links of those two parts are going to be in the description box below, so you can also click to those links and listen to it. And I really hope that you all are liking this story, and this story is triggering the interest in you all, and you're looking forward to listen till the end of it. So let us read the next part. Orteja had served in Puri on the frigate Almirante Padilla. He had travelled a great deal and knew the ship's sea well, but even through the gulf was calm. He had to be helped from his station at the change of watch. He seemed to be in agony, could not tolerate food, and his companions on watch had propped him up at the stern until they got an order to remove him to his bunk. Later, he was stretched out there, face down, with his head hanging over the side, waiting to vomit. I think it was Raymond Herrera who told me on the night of the 26th that things would get worse when we reached the Caribbean. According to our calculation, we would be leaving the Gulf of Mexico after midnight. At my watch station in front of the torpedo tubes, I thought optimistically about our arrival in Cartagena. The night was clear, and the high, round sky was filled with stars. From the time I joined the Navy, I had made a habit of identifying the stars, and that night I enjoyed doing it as the Calda serenely made its way towards the Caribbean. I think that an old sailor who has traveled the whole world can determine by the movement of his ship which sea he is sailing. My experience of the place where I had done my first sea duty told me we were in the Caribbean. I looked at my watch. It was half past midnight on the morning of February 27th. I would have known we were in the Caribbean even if the ship weren't rolling so much. But now I began to feel upset. I had a strange sense of premonition, and without knowing why, I thought of Chief Orteja, who was down below in his bunk with his stomach in his mouth. At 6 o'clock, the destroyer began pitching violently. Luis Rengifo was awake, one bunk below me. Fatso, he asked me, haven't you gotten sick yet? I said no, but I admitted I was worried. Rengifo, who, as I have said, was an engineer, very studious, and a good seaman, explained why it was unlikely that something could happen to the Caldas in the Caribbean. It's an old ship, he said. And then I remember that during the war, the destroyer had sunk a German submarine in this same waters. It's a safe ship, Luis Rengifo said. And lying in my bunk, unable to sleep because of the rocking of the ship, I felt reassured by his words. But the wind grew stronger on the port side, and I imagined what might have happened to the Caldas in those tremendous breakers. At that moment, I remembered the Cane Mutiny. But the weather hadn't changed at all, and our voyage was normal. When I relieved the watch, I kept busy thinking about what I would do when we reached Cartagena. First, I would write to Mary. I thought I would write to her twice a week because I wasn't lazy about letters. Ever since I joined the Navy, I had written to my family in Bogota every week and regularly sent letters to friends in my neighborhood, Olaya. I would write Mary when we got to Cartagena. I figured out exactly how many hours it would take us to get there. 24. That was the last thing I did on this watch. Raymond Herrera helped me carry Miguel Orteja back to his bunk. He was worse. He had had no food since leaving Mobile 3 days before. He could barely speak, and he looked green and decidedly under the weather. The dance began at 10 p.m. The haldas had been swaying all day, but not as badly as on that night of 27. As I lay awake in my bunk, fearing for the crewmen on watch, I realized that no one of the sailor lying in their bunks had been able to get to sleep. A little before midnight, I asked Luis Rendifo in the bunk below me, "Haven't you got sick yet?" As I suspected, he hadn't been able to sleep either. But despite the lurching of the ship, he hadn't lost his sense of humor. He said, "I told you, the day I'm sick, the sea itself will be sick." It was a phrase he repeated often, but that night he barely had a chance to finish what he was saying. I have said I was uneasy. I have said that I felt something akin to fear. But I have no doubts about what I felt before, after midnight on the 27th, when over the loudspeaker came the general order. All personnel to the port side. I understood what that order meant. The boat was listing dangerously to starboard, and we were trying to right her with our weight. For the first time in 2 years of sailing, I was truly afraid of the sea. The wind whistled up on deck, where the crew would be soaked and shivering. The moment I heard the order, I jumped out of my bunk. Very calmly, Luis Rengifo got up and went to one of the portside bunks, which was vacant because it belonged to one of the men on watch. Holding on to the other bunk, I tried to walk, but at that moment I remembered Miguel Oteja. He couldn't move. When he heard the order, he tried to get up but fell back into his bunk, overcome by seasickness and exhaustion. I helped him sit up and she secured him in the portside bunk. In a very low voice, he told me he was ill. "Let's arrange it so you don't have to go on watch," I said. It seemed like a bad joke, but if Miguel Orteja had stayed in his bunk, he would still be alive. Without even a minute's sleep, 6 of us who were on call assembled on the stern deck at 4 a.m. on the 28th. One was Raymond Herrera, my companion the whole time. The watch officer was Guillermo Rosso. It was my last duty on board. I knew that at 2 in the afternoon we would arrive at Cartagena. I thought that I would go to sleep as soon as I was relieved from watch, so that I could go out and enjoy myself on my home ground after an 8 months absence. At 5:30, I went on an inspection tour below decks, accompanied by a cabin boy. At 7, we relieved those on active duty so that they could go to breakfast. At 8, they came back to relieve us. That was my last watch. Nothing unusual had happened, even though the wind was gaining force and the waves were getting bigger and bigger, crashing on the bridge and washing over the deck. Raymond Herrera was at the stern. Luis Rengifo was there too, as a lifeguard with headphones in place. Lying down in center of the deck, still in agony with his seasickness, was Miguel Orteja. That was a spot where the ship felt most stable. I talked a little with Seaman second class, Eduardo Castillo from Supply, a very reserved man and a bachelor from Bogota. I don't remember what we talked about. All I knew is that we didn't see each other again until he plunged into the sea a few hours later. Raymond Herrera was collecting some cartoons to cover himself with while he tried to get some sleep. With the rolling of the ship, it was impossible to sleep in our quarters. The waves, getting taller and more powerful, swept over the deck. Amid the refrigerator, washing machine, and stove that was tightly secured on the stern deck, Raymond Herrera and I lay down, carefully positioning ourselves to avoid being swept away by a wave. I looked up at the sky. In this position, I felt more secure, certain that in a few hours we would be reaching the Bay of Cartagena. There was no storm, the day was perfectly clear, visibility total, and the sky a deep blue. Now my boots weren't even hurting me. for I had changed into a pair of rubber soled shoes after going off watch. So in my next video, I'm going to read out the next part of this story, as I have told that it would take a little more time to complete, but I do feel that it is a very interesting story and people are also liking to listen to it. So till then, keep sharing my videos, like and subscribe to my channel.